and welcome to Black Economic TV. We have with us today Mbeke Waseme. She is a strategic social justice leader, DEIJ consultant, coach, action learning facilitator, and her themes are health, balance, and equity. Welcome, Mbeke. How are you?
Thank you, Dawn. I'm well today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. The weather's getting warmer, so gotta look up and be positive. Summer's coming. Yay.
Yes.
Okay, tell me about your career journey from the start to where you are now as a coach and DEIJ consultant. I've got to say, I haven't heard the J, so maybe you could explain a little bit more about that.
Okay. So my career journey is long and, like many people, not straightforward. So I started my career, I would say at university. I did a sociology degree, and prior to that, I'd had a fabulous A-level sociology teacher who told me to question everything. And I think that stayed with me. So 16-year-old sociology teacher. And prior to that, I had an English teacher who, at 11 years old, said that we should read books by people who look like us. And he made a point, and this is new for London, he made a point of ensuring that my library at Vauxhall Manor Secondary School was filled with books by Black writers. So at 11, I was reading Maya Angelou, Alice Walker. I was reading Entezake Shange. By 19, I had progressed to Bell Hooks, another social scientist who has given us a great body of work. She passed away recently, the last couple of years, by an amazing writer who also embedded the question of justice for me. So the J is about justice. So when I go into schools, I'm looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, an area of work which is seriously under challenge in the current climate, and justice, what's happening for children who experience inequity, who experience discrimination, what happens to teachers who experience discrimination, who experience a less than satisfactory ex, ex, a less than satisfactory day at work because of practices and policies that don't support them, while they're doing their best to support the students. So the justice is about making sure that that experience sits well with the individuals who receive it.
Okay, so J is for justice. That's very useful.
Yes, yeah,
Thank you. I can imagine there'll be a number of people who want to talk to you.
yeah.
Now, tell me about your action learning facilitator for health, balance, and equity. What do you do there?
So lots of organizations are going through challenging times, and a lot of them approach that challenge through top-down dictator style policies and practices. You must do this, you must do that. Organizations which choose to have another form of leadership go for what's called action learning sets, or what we also call peer coaching. This is where a team of professionals will come together. It can be in a room face to face, or it can be online, and one of them will present a challenge they're having, and the other three or four members of their team will support them with their own knowledge. However, the important difference between a discussion with friends or a meeting with action learning facilitation, the contributors are not allowed to give advice. Now, that's a skill in itself. So if I say to you, Dawn, I've got this problem, I don't know what to do, quite often the first thing that we go to, our default is, you need to do this because when I
Yeah,
did it,
yeah.
this is what happened. Now, the way the brain works, and all of this is couched in very deep science, when our brains receive a question, we have to delve deeper, and neurons are produced in our brain that will enhance the next time we have a challenge and support us. If I give you advice, no new neurons are produced. You receive the advice, you go off, and the next time you have a problem, you have to ask again. So, an action learning set allows you to develop new ways of tackling future problems as well as dealing with the problem that you bring to the set. It's an amazing scientifically based opportunity for people to resolve their challenges with their peers. And for the peers who take part and for the ones who observe, they also learn that asking questions is so much more powerful, which is what coaching is about, than giving the answer. And as
Oh,
someone who,
wow.
yeah, I was a former school teacher, and when I did my first coach training, the facilitator said that teachers are the worst people to who move from teaching to coaching. They're the worst students. And he said primarily because when you're in a school setting, it's so go, 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 go. When someone asks you a question, they just want an answer so they can get on with the next thing. And actually, there often isn't the time in the school setting. But if you're in a space, a corporate setting, a charity setting, a setting where there is a time that's been set aside for the action learning sets, then the people who engage with that come away much stronger, much more versatile and innovative in their approach to problem solving because of those neurons that have been formed in the brain.
It's amazing. So basically, people are asking questions, and you yourself, who's being coached, is coming up with the answers.
Exactly, exactly. And I facilitate
Wow.
those discussions because when a group comes together the first time, everyone's ready to give the answer. Everyone's willing to give their advice. You should do this. I did that. I know that manager because they're working in the same setting. But actually, it doesn't serve the person who needs the support. Actually, learning how to listen really well and to ask questions is a skill in itself. And by the
Mm.
time the group have met the second or third time, they've got it. And they know that
Wow.
they're not giving advice, they're asking questions. And in the
Okay,
business setting,
okay.
it's fantastic.
And everybody who's taking part in that, they get something out of that. This is what you're saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. I used to observe teachers, and the thing about observation is that if you're in the space of learning, you can learn through observing. You can
Mm.
learn through asking the questions. You can learn from hearing what the answers are when the person who has the problem has heard all of the questions, has processed them, and has said, actually, from all of the support in this room, I can now take this first step towards resolving my challenge.
Mm. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so you've also done some work in West Africa. Tell us about that.
I have. So I was working in the UK. A lot of my life has been within education, and I see education as an umbrella for other things I've done. So I've worked as a photographer, I am a writer, I have worked as a DJ. And so the education
Wow.
I bring to my DJ is that I don't play music that degrades women. I don't play music that will make people feel bad about themselves because of the language that's used. So at whatever place I'm in, education rules. Yeah. And
Mm.
so um, I had learned about Ghana and particularly Kwame Nkrumah as a young Pan-Africanist involved in grassroots politics, going to meetings. And I knew that what Ghana wanted to do. And at the same time, Michael Manley in Jamaica, Maurice Bishop in Grenada, there were a number of different leaders around that time who all wanted the same kind of change. And those changes involved improved education, healthcare, and housing for the majority. Because wherever I've lived in the world, the rich will always be okay. But the majority,
Mm.
who are generally the poorer group, if they don't have good healthcare, if they don't have good education, if they don't have good housing, their whole lives are impacted.
Mm.
So when I saw a job advertised to work in Ghana, I was like, yes, let me go for this. And it was literally advertised in the Times Educational Supplement in London. And I applied
Lovely.
to be a vice principal in a school in Ghana. What I
Yeah.
didn't realize was that this was one of the top schools in Ghana. So I was a vice principal for Ghana International School, the biggest international school in West
Mm.
Africa, for 3 years. I learned almost everything that I know about Ghana from working in that school. It was predominantly Ghanaian staff. There were some expatriates, but it was, I mean, it's a whole book. That experience of 3 years living and working in Ghana is a whole book because as a Jamaican of Jamaican background, people in Ghana that I work with, their families were part of the slave trade. And they would tell me they were sworn to secrecy. Their families in Kumasi rounded up and saw their brothers and sisters. And that's their lived experience. And so I was working alongside people like that. When I applied for the job and I went to Ghana for my induction, a week in Ghana before I started the role, I was asked if I was married. And I wasn't. I had been asked. And I said, what relevance does that has to do with the job? Because in England, you can't go for a job and somebody asks you if you're married. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said, what relevance is that? And a man in the audience said, women who are married are much more reliable than single women. And my feminist head was like, what are you talking about? So I just took a deep breath and I said, well, that's an interesting stance because there are lots of marriages which are marriage only in name. And so if you're judging me for being single, let me do the job. And if you have a challenge, you bring that to me then. Um, but yeah, it was a test and a half. My chair of the board said to me in the induction, if I knew you were Jamaican, I wouldn't have hired you. And and I said, if someone said that to me in England, I would tell them to keep the job and probably take them to court. And he said, well, Jamaicans smoke weed. And I said, sorry, that stereotype, I've never smoked in my life. But it was, it was hurdles to jump through,
Mm.
breaths to take, because many people leave England and they think of going to live in somewhere like Ghana and they think it's straightforward. It's not straightforward. It's not straightforward when you leave everything that you've ever known, people, friends,
Mm.
rituals, the familiarity of the English terrible weather can sometimes seem quite attractive when you're in a place that's 40 degrees every day. And so, living in Ghana was a mixed blessing. There was lots that I learned from it, lots that I loved about it, and there were also the challenges that went with it. So yes,
Mm.
I worked in West Africa. I've also worked in Cameroon. It was one of my first roles overseas as a volunteer. And I still encourage people, if they have the opportunity to do voluntary work, to take it and add it to their CV, particularly young people, because voluntary work can add years to your CV in terms of applying for roles, because that lived experience beats any A-level degree.
Really?
Yes, yes. If you've worked in a voluntary space and you've worked alongside influential people and you've done the hands-on work, being a volunteer will work in your favor. It most definitely will.
Well, that's very interesting. Oh, thank you for that advice. We'll make sure that that is spread all around. Okay, you mentioned something about working in Ghana 3 years. That's a whole book. Did you write a book on it?
I wrote a book on how to live, work, and thrive abroad, and that includes
Oh.
my time in Ghana. It includes
Mhm.
my time living and working in Malaysia. It includes my
Wow.
time. I worked in Dubai for short stints. I mean, Dubai now is looking very different to how it was when I was there.
Yes, yeah.
And I've worked in Jamaica. And
Oh,
again, I was fired in Jamaica because I was working in a school with a US curriculum. And again, with my rational and political head, and I was like, why are we teaching the children in Jamaica about Abraham Lincoln? And the head mistress was not happy, and the parents complained because I chose to teach the children about Marcus Garvey and Nanny of the Maroons as local heroes. And the private school and the private school parents complained about this woman from England teaching our children about this Jamaican history that they don't need to know.
what?
They fired me, and I said, "Okay, I am learning about the world and its biases through these experiences because
That's
I
madness.
I agree. And I would have assumed that going to Jamaica and teaching children about their Jamaican history, because in this country, we have these fantasies about what it's like when we go overseas. And
Yes, we
rarely
do.
is it like that. So, we're fighting in this country for education to be changed, to be challenged, to be modified, and to incorporate Black history so that there is a world history that's accurate, because it's currently inaccurate, and we go overseas and think the same thing is happening. Very rarely is it happening. And very rarely do we have the opportunity to make the kind of change that we think we can. Not at the public structural level, but we can set up our own schools. My cousin has set up a school, a place of learning in South Africa called Africology, and it's an institution of learning and self-reliance. So they grow their own food, they learn about nutrition, they do lots of amazing things that will serve them, not just academically, but will serve them in real life.
I can hardly believe they fired you in Jamaica for teaching you about one of their heroes,
Yes,
for
absolutely,
teaching children about one of their heroes. It's just
absolutely.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's believable when you get to understand the Jamaican psyche around these heroes. Um, it's not good, but it's believable.
Okay, okay. All right. And another of your books, Exploring All of Me, what's that one about?
Poetry, poetry. So I'm a poet, and it's
Oh.
one of my first books. So those poems began when I was at university. So I did my university degree in the 80s. And by the time I finished university, I joined a writers group that at that point was taking place at the Book Place in Peckham, which was a local bookshop funded by the GLC, I believe. And they did amazing writers events there. They had amazing writers who were there. So at the Book Place in Peckham, I met Paul Robeson, which I have photographs.
Nice.
I met the editor of Essence magazine, whose name escapes me at the moment. Ah, what's her name? She was the editor in chief for a long time. It will come. But yeah, there's so much activity that went on there, and they were asking the women who were members of the writers group to bring their work in. And we're talking pre-computer. So I had a
Mhm.
bag of poems that I had typed, and I took them along,
Mhm.
and a decision was made by the team that myself and another woman who had both had large collections, we would have a book each. So my first poetry book was published in the late 80s, and I republished it as the copyright was with me 30 odd years later.
Okay.
So
You
yeah.
don't look old enough, honestly. Well done. Okay, well, I'm going to put links to these books at the bottom of the video so that people
Okay,
can uh, go look for them and buy them and support you. There was
thank
a
you.
third book as well. Tell me about the third book.
So the third book was How to Live, Work, and Thrive Abroad, and that was the book about living abroad. A lot of people, after I came back from Malaysia in 2019, a lot of people asked me, how do you do it? How do you pack up and leave? And how do you do that? And there are, for anyone who has ever left, first of all, I salute them because it's not an easy thing to do. To
That's
pack
right, it's
up,
right.
yes, to pack up your things. And I know some people who have packed everything up and they've sold their homes, either their apartment or their house, and they've gone overseas and it hasn't worked out. And London
Mm,
is a it's moving all the time. So often if you leave an area, rarely can you go back to that area and buy somewhere. Doesn't happen.
mm.
That's not always accessible to you. So when you leave, first of all, there's a lot that goes into leaving. There's the emotional process of, as I said, leaving everything that you've ever known, leaving your high streets, leaving your convenience stores, leaving your family, leaving your friends, leaving access to things that you've taken for granted that suddenly are not available to you. And in
Mm,
everywhere that I've lived, every place that I've lived, there's been lots and lots of blessings and there's been lots of challenges. So living
mm.
and working in Malaysia, Malaysia's an interesting country. And at the moment, I'm seeing a lot about people relocating to Malaysia. And it's
Oh,
seen as a favorable space for Black and Brown people. The climate is fantastic. The cost of living is low. The food range is amazing. So when I arrived in Malaysia, it was my first time, first of all, in Southeast Asia. And I realized that a lot of the food that I thought was Jamaican was not. It had been brought to Jamaica by the indentured labor. So Jamaica has a long history of Asian and Chinese indentured labor, people who've stayed over
yes.
in the Caribbean for generations. So, my jackfruit and my soursop and my sweet sop and my guinea, And I mean, there's just so many foods that originally come from Asia that I didn't know. And so, one, to be in Asia and have access to good food was a blessing. I like good, fresh food. Um, but also, Malaysia has three dominant groups that live there. And it's interesting to see how it operates. So, you have the Hindu, who have been there for generations, predominantly from Southeast Asia, from Kerala. You have the Muslims who are in power, and many of them were not born in Malaysia. They were born in Indonesia or Thailand, but they've made Malaysia their home. And then you have the Chinese. Many of them are Buddhists. And there's all kind of interlinked experiences. So when I was living in Malaysia, I met a lot of Chinese women who were Muslim. And you could see through their headwear that they were Muslim. And so for me, that's a confusion. I didn't understand that. And then Malaysia, like lots of places, have wonderful taxi drivers who will take you on long detours from where you want to go whilst telling you local stories. And,
Wow.
one of the taxi drivers explained to me that a lot of the Chinese that have lived in Malaysia only wanted boys. And when they had their girls, some of them would literally discard them. They would put them on the doorsteps of Malaysian friends. They would put them literally next to the dustbin because they didn't want girls, they
Oh,
wanted boys. And so some of the Chinese women that I met in Malaysia were raised as Muslims, yeah, by the
oh,
Malaysian families who took them in. Malaysia also has a system similar to Australia. So the Aborigines, who in Malaysia call the Malay, have different practices to the Muslims, and sometimes they have practices that include burning incense and carrying out rituals, which is very different to the practice of Islam. And because of those practices, they are left on the outskirts of society. Some schools won't take them. Um,
what?
they don't have access to a lot of the rights that Muslims have: land rights, housing rights, tax rights, even though they're the original people in Malaysia. And in Malaysia, when you raise these topics and you say, well, this sounds like the Aborigines in Australia, people will say, yes, but we don't talk about it here. Yeah.
Oh,
And so yeah, and it is terrible. And there's things that you will only ever learn when you travel, when you're in a country. And
yeah.
as much as you can go onto YouTube. There are travelers now who are going into the interior. And so some of those YouTubers, some of those influencers are exposing things that you would never have known before. So social media is playing a part in challenging some of what we thought we knew. And I love
Yeah.
it for that. I love it for that.
Yeah.
I say to
It's,
people, yeah, travel has been my best education in terms of
yeah. Yeah.
learning. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Well done with that. So I wanted to talk about your experience with grants because you said to me that you've actually been on a number of grant making bodies boards,
Yes.
part
Yes.
of the selection process.
Yeah.
Now, a
Yeah.
lot of businesses actually want to know more about grants to be able to
Yeah.
get money into your business or organization without having to pay it back is quite
Mhm.
an advantage and a boon. And I would imagine most people would want to go for that. So tell us
Yeah.
more about the grants that are available in the UK, first of
Yeah.
all.
So, first of all, I think this is one of the few countries that has so many grants available, and there are lots. So there are grants that are available from your local authority, and there are usually at least 4 to 5 of those running throughout the year. Some of them are open all year, some of them are open for certain periods, but there are usually 4 or 5 based on your postcode. So literally, there are grants that you can access because of your postcode. There are national grants open to you if you're based in England, and then there are international grants that you can apply for. But if we stay with the first two, um, I have been, I have worked with the Arts Council, and a lot of people who are in the arts world go straight to the Arts Council when looking for grants. There are lots and lots of other grant bodies that are available out there. And I say to anybody who's applying for a grant, build up your rejection or redirection muscle, because the chances are the first time you may be rejected or redirected. So build that up, because I've spoken to contacts who have applied once, they've had that experience, and they say, I'm never going to apply again. And I say, well, that doesn't make sense. If you're looking for a house and the first one you see isn't the right house, you don't stop looking for houses, you keep going. And if
Mm.
if you put in a bid for a house and somebody else gets it, you don't stop, you keep going. Yeah. Um, so that's the first thing. The second thing is when you are redirected, there are a number of reasons why that might be the case. So while I was working at the Arts Council, if somebody applied for a grant, as a team, we would come together when it was grant allocation period. And let's supposing my team had 300,000 to allocate and we had 50 applications. Now, if it was under the 15,000 criteria, we'd look at all of those grants and we'd say, this is a really strong application. And if 10 of them were really strong and they all wanted 15,000, they'd gone for the maximum, that's 150,000 gone already. Yeah. That means we've got 150,000 left, but we also have, if it's 50, we also have another 40 people, yeah, who have applied. Now, some of those application forms might just be terrible, so we take those out and we put those aside. What is left only has 150,000 between however many are in the middle.
Mm.
And so when someone's not successful, it can be because there isn't enough money left, because all of the 12,000 or the 7,000 were really good, and there isn't enough money left for you to be allocated a grant. It can be because you haven't addressed some of the criteria. And with all organizations, they have very set criteria that they want to be addressed. So it might be, what's the impact that your grant is going to have on your local community? How are you going to address health and well-being, which is a really big topic right now? Issues around loneliness are coming up more and more in grants criteria. So
Really?
there are lots of single people living in London, and the NHS now recognizes that loneliness is a problem. So when you're constantly in a state of loneliness, your body's impacted, your mind is impacted. So more people will die from loneliness than they will from diabetes or from
Mhm.
high blood pressure. I mean, those things will get worse if you're living alone. And those things will definitely get better if you have a good social community, if you take yourself out and do things, if you get involved with activities. So if your organization is able to provide a service that is able to alleviate the symptoms of loneliness, that's able to engage with particular groups and able to give them a worthwhile and a happy experience, you are part of the foundation that people are looking for now who are giving grants. So you look clearly and carefully at the criteria. How do you meet it? The other thing that many funders are looking for now is collaborations. So if you collaborate with either an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or another company, the chances of you being successful go up. None of these
Really?
guarantee, but if you're collaborating, people are looking at that favorably. Too many people applying on their own, but actually they want to see collaboration. They want to see a mixture of skills and services coming together. So if you are I don't know, if you are somebody who teaches meditation and you collaborate with somebody who does business advice, that will be favorable as opposed to just the meditation or just the business advice.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. And the other thing is more and more funders are looking for recognized models of organizations, i.e., CICs, a community interest company, both regarded as charities because I think it's 60% of what you make has to go back into the business, and then 40% can go into other areas. You can get paid for as being a member of both types of organizations. Whereas years ago, people who were solopreneurs could apply for funding, quite healthy funding, and do either research, development, or carry out projects. So the funding for solopreneurs is still available, but the move is more towards funding organizations and definitely towards funding those who are working together, a collaboration, partnership, whatever model you go for, but more than one organization.
Can I ask, have you applied for grants yourself?
I have. So after my contract at the Arts Council was for a year, and so 2 years later, I applied for funding, and I was unsuccessful. And I was like, "Hey, I used to work here, so there's no guarantee." Um, but being me, I was ready to rewrite the application form, and I thought, no, Mbeke, just look at what they've said needs to be addressed, and so kind of put the brakes on, addressed what they said, and I was successful, and I secured a DYCP, which is Develop Your Creative Practice. And so that's where, as a practitioner, you can develop a new skill. You can't go to DYCP if it's a skill you already have and you want to do more of it. It needs to be something new. So I used it to research a project, an overseas project. So I went to Florida, spent some time in Ghana and in Jamaica interviewing the children of the Windrush to have a
Oh,
look at why they had left. And that footage is now available, and I'm going to make that into a short documentary. And DYCP has a window of 2,000 to 12,000. I applied for 11,900 and I was successful. Um,
great.
I've secured smaller grants, £1,000 here, £500 there. I'm in the process of waiting for the outcome of a grant and also working with somebody as their access support to do some research into how communities manage the loss of their mothers, knowing that losing your mother is an incredibly important thing that happens, but people have traditions and practices. So the Akan have a particular practice in Ghana, and there is an African group in the Philippines that also have a long history of matriarchal rites and rituals when the mother dies. And so we're looking at doing some research to capture that, to then offer workshops to women from the global majority who have lost their mothers. And we want to allow that space because a lot of people lose their mothers and never grieve properly. It impacts their whole life. And the UK is a strange place when death happens because people expect you to get on with it, whatever that means for them. And I
Mm.
always say to people, I lost my mom when I was 16, and it took me about 30 years to recover.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So to really stop crying at those pivotal moments when my daughter was born,
Oh,
son was born, um, when I was in hospital, the times when your mother would be there. And so, and the sister that I'm working with, she's had a similar experience. And so we want to offer a space for healing by the sea in Kent where people can come along and have that space and to work with a counselor. We're working with a counselor and a mental health specialist so that if anybody revisits something so deep that it triggers them, the support is in
mm.
place.
Oh, fantastic. That's
Yeah.
really good. Well done. You wrote something also, another book about menopause? Back
Yes,
in
I have
menopause.
a chapter in that book on Black and menopausal. And
Okay.
the that's linked to so many things. I mean, the fact is that research is coming out more and more that in the UK, when Black women experience pain, their pain is not taken seriously or as seriously as their white counterparts. We're
Yeah.
seeing a lot when women give birth. So when they're crying out for pain, and this goes back to the training. So when white specialists are trained within the NHS, there's almost a training element that says the pain that Black people feel is not as severe as white people. So Black women have a much higher tolerance for pain. So when Black women are crying and rolling around and saying they're in pain, specialists often say, "Oh, we'll get to you." If a white woman is in pain, they get to it much quicker. And
Mm,
so, and the same has been with the menopause. So when Black women are experiencing menopause, they're not receiving the same kind of advice and support in the
mm,
workspace and from the medical specialist. And part of the work that I contributed to that book was having spent a lot of time in Ghana what I realized was that the women around me in Ghana who were going through the menopause were not experiencing anything near what women in the UK were experiencing. And the reason for that was Ghana's yam, Puna yam, and most yams
Mm-hmm.
are high in estrogen.
Yes.
What we lose when we go through menopause is estrogen. That impacts our muscles, it impacts our joints. Estrogen plays such a crucial part to our well-being. And it's only when it's being depleted that we realize how we feel and how different our bodies feel and our brains. And so looking at the way that women in Ghana eat, it was a way of saying to us, we have access to yam here. It's not the same stock, it's been transported, it may have been injected, all kind of things may happen to it to get it from there to here. But yam, some yam is still better than no yam in terms of having estrogen in the body, as well as making other changes. And that book is important, again, as I said, because the experiences of Black women are not recognized in the same way as those of white women. And so it's
Okay.
important to have a book that speaks to that demographic.
Okay, great. And you also have another chapter on maximizing the potential of Black women in the UK workplace.
Yes, yes. So that book was looking at some of the experiences that Black women have in the workplace. And the yeah, the book was interesting because in that chapter I spoke about hair and how my hair has been such an issue in my workplace. So I've had different expressions with my hair, and I've had managers say to me, I didn't know you wore braids. And me say to them, and why is that important? I just didn't think you were a woman that wore braids. And my brain is going, okay, so obviously they have an image or an idea of what kind of women wear braids and the tone. So I'm listening to the tone. I'm a coach, I'm an NLP practitioner. I'm listening to the tone of the way that message is delivered. And that message is telling me that kind of person is not the person that we have here. Yeah. And this is in a college in Southeast London with a predominantly Black student group, but a predominantly white department that I'm in. And I'm saying,
Yeah.
okay. And so yeah, you have these experiences and these experiences can make or break you. You know, I
Mm.
wear an African dress in the summer and I'm told, oh, that's really bright. Um, Not especially, not when I'm wearing it in Ghana, but it may feel like that for you, but it's not what you say, it's always how you say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, in term how I receive that and how that lands on my body, my spirit, my soul, when you decide that I'm not right for that environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So, were you given workplaces ideas in terms of how they can really make use of Black women in their workplaces, how they can appreciate them more?
Have I done that?
Yeah, were you doing that in that chapter?
No, no, I was working. No, I was reflecting on the experience. What the
Oh,
editor
the
wanted, she
experience.
wanted us to reflect on our experiences as Black women in
Okay.
spaces and what that's meant for us. So it was, yeah, a
Okay.
reflective piece.
But has there been any positive experience you think that we bring to the workplace?
Oh, there's loads of positive experiences that we bring to the workspace, that we bring to the landscape. I mean, England would be a very, very dry, boring place without us amazing Black women and our
Agreed.
contributions. Management spaces, boardroom spaces, quite often they opt for people who look like them. They opt for people who sound like them. So you can walk into a boardroom and there is no diversity of thought, there's no diversity of innovation. And yet these spaces can be making decisions about predominantly Black and brown spaces. So you walk into a boardroom and it's all white men making decisions about what's going to happen in Lewisham Centre for young people. So Lewisham, as an example, has a high percentage of global majority people, but yet the people
Mm.
making the decisions about them often don't look like them. And the
Mm.
difference is that we as global majority people making those spaces is that We have a living experience. Yeah. We have cultural capital. And we have so much more that isn't valued because of those biases that are entrenched in those spaces. And so, yes, we have lots to offer. We continue to offer that. And sometimes we have to create our own spaces to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are able to do it in spaces that have had to relook at how they are operating with the rest of the world. I remember working at the Arts Council with a group who were in Kent, and they had an all-white board. And I challenged them about how this represented the groups they wanted to work with. And the gentleman said to me, yes, we realize we're all white, and we realize that we're working with predominantly young Black people, and we'll get to it. But we just haven't sorted it out yet. And I said, well, you've had a lot of time to do this in terms of when this application was first submitted. And really, that's what you need to go and do. Um, if you're being true to having a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, but yet you're not addressing it at the board level, then you're not addressing it because that's where the decisions are made. So, yeah, we have a lot to offer, and we have lots of ways in which we offer that. But it's important that we do so, knowing that we do have cultural capital, because quite often we're asked to join focus groups and to
Yeah.
give away our experience for free. I say that's not okay, because what we're offering is what one of your board members is being paid 80, 90, 100,000 for, but they can't do
Wow.
that because that's not their experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. So, in terms of your coaching,
Yes.
many people are reluctant to get a coach or they don't want to pay for it. What are the
Mm.
advantages of having a coach?
The advantages of having a coach are many. One of the advantages is that if I go and talk to my friend and I say I have a challenge, and my friend will listen, first of all, my friend has never been trained how to listen. Yeah. And listening is a skill. So if you listen to two people talking, and I do this often when I'm on public transportation, they're not listening to each other. They're just saying what they want to say. They're saying their story, and they're just waiting to jump in, but they're not hearing the person that they are supposedly with. Um, so one, you want someone who's trained to listen. You want somebody who has a framework that they're working with. So within coaching, as within every other specialist area, there are models that I work with depending on what the challenge is that the person wants to resolve. There's a difference between having a problem-centric approach to life and a solution so focused approach to life. So you can have a conversation with a friend and you say to them, it'd be really good if you did that. And they'll say, oh, well, I tried that and that didn't work. And then you make another suggestion. They say, I tried. And so you can have that circular conversation. And with a coach, you are accountable. You have a 60 or 90 minutes conversation. Very rarely, and I do mean this hand on heart, very rarely in any 1 month does anybody that I know get a full 60 or 90-minute conversation with someone who's just there for them, just listening to them. Yeah. So that happens very, very rarely. And then that accountability, when I meet my coachee for session number 2, and I say to them, this is our discussion, these are your action points, how did you get on? They know they're coming back to a session with someone where they've made a contract and they're accountable to that commitment. The idea of paying for something also means another level of commitment. If I am going to an event and the tickets are free and I book my free ticket, I'm one of the people that even if I'm not attending, I will cancel my ticket. I go to events and there are so many seats empty, and I say to the organizers,
Oh,
what's happened? They say,
yeah.
it's free. People just didn't turn up. When you pay, you're going to turn up. You want value for your money. And that's a psychological thing. If things are either free or they're too cheap, people don't value them. And
Oh,
so when someone has a coach and they've signed a contract for a coaching relationship, and it might be for 4 weeks, it might be for 2 weeks, because you can have an amazing coaching session. And at the end of that 60 or 90 minutes, the major challenge that you had has been resolved. And having that challenge resolved can have a domino effect on lots of other things. So
mm,
it has so many benefits to it. As a coach, I'm going to bring to the space my decades of experience and wisdom, my decades of experience of living in different places. And that can be important because if I'm coaching somebody from Nigeria, from Ghana, from the Philippines, I have an understanding of the expressions. Makes a massive difference if somebody makes a comment to me, makes a sound, which is an expression, I will know what it means. Yeah,
yeah,
not everybody will. So each of us as coaches bring something unique to the space, but those areas make it worthwhile. And for me, when I have my coaching session and my coach, he sends me an email saying, "Thank you so much. That's made such a difference to the targets that I wasn't able to meet." And sometimes it's really small things.
mhm,
Sometimes people are challenged with work-life balance. Sometimes people are having mental health challenges because they are working at home. And so if I link that back to the single occupancy and loneliness issues that I mentioned earlier, somebody working at home Monday to Friday and living alone can have major mental health challenges. When we had the workplace and we would stop at the photocopier and have a 2-minute chat, that could make a massive difference to the day. If you're at the
yeah,
coffee machine, that can make a massive, because those exchanges of energy can help you to unpack something very quickly. If you're at home, what's happening is that's compounding. So you're there Monday to Friday. Whatever went on Monday, you've had no one to talk to about it. That's compounded. The next week, something else happens. Or even in that week, three things can happen. And if you don't know how to coach yourself, which is something you also learn when you're being coached, yeah, you learn and you understand that you can also ask yourself those questions at the time of challenge. So while you're having that particular matter resolved, you're also developing a skill set for being able to manage your challenges in the future. So coaching is an amazing tool. It's an amazing tool. It's something that most of us do not have afforded to us by our friends who are not professional coaches. And it's something that can make a massive difference to your professional life. And
mm,
always know that your coach doesn't have to be a specialist in your area. So I've coached people in the banking industry. I've coached people in the charitable sectors. I've coached people in the education sector. I've coached people in the corporate sector. The coach is the person who's able to listen, ask the right questions, and to ensure that the person you're coaching leaves knowing that they were heard, that they have a
mm,
commitment to make the changes.
mm. Okay, that's great. I've got to say, there's one thing that uh, highlighted yourself to me. I asked a question once, how many people have 10 ideas before breakfast?
Yes,
And you said, I do.
I do. I
That's
do.
amazing. One of those ideas persons, huh?
Yes, yes. And I walk. Most mornings I walk. I walk for between 30 and 60 minutes. And I'm one of these people where ideas come when I'm moving. And as I
Mm,
said to you, you can either, I'm not going to take all of them and turn them into something, but they do
yeah,
come. And being out in
yeah.
the heath amongst the trees and that landscape really does work for me.
Okay, great, wonderful. Well, I hope that you've encouraged a few people to seek out a coach or even talk to you. We
Absolutely.
will we will put your link at the bottom of the video.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for your time today, Mbeke. It was
You're
really
welcome.
enlightening.
You're welcome, Dawn, and thank you for allowing me to speak with you, and hopefully it will turn into other things for both of us.